Hello and welcome to the second chapter of the education course. This chapter is going to focus on the newsfeed. Now the newsfeed is the heart and soul of Benzinga Pro. News is at the heart of what we do here at Benzinga, so it's no surprise that this is one of the primary tools in Benzinga Pro, and it's also no surprise how much control you have over it and how great the information you can get out of it actually is. I want to show you some of the different functionality here for the newsfeed. Now, the first thing that we're going to start off with is what are you looking at? In this case, I've gone ahead and added a newsfeed to the workspace. You can do this several ways. If you click the plus button at the top, you'll be brought to a screen that allows you to build a workspace, whether it be selecting a recommended one or selecting the individual tools here from the left. If you're already in a workspace, as I was here in the example, you can simply click on the app drawer icon, which is the three boxes and the plus logo in the upper left hand corner. You can add a news feed this way. The other thing that you can do is if you click the BZ icon in the upper left corner, that will open up your sidebar here. You can add the tool from this as well. It's all the same. It doesn't matter. It's just a different way for you to do that. Now, I like to leave this sidebar closed because I want as much screen real estate as possible in my workspace. Even if it's that little sidebar, I like to keep it closed. I can access the same content here from the app drawer. Now, let's start here with these two news feeds. I want to show you why I loaded in a second one and why this might be beneficial for you, especially if you're a newer user. So on this news feed on the left here, I want to go ahead and click on the button at the top in the upper left corner that says sources. Let's talk about some of the different options that you have in here. First of all, the first source here, this is Benzinga Signals, and this is our automated signals algorithm. You might have already noticed that Signals actually has its own tool in Benzinga Pro. That's what I use. That's what I would advise users use. However, if you want that same content printed here in line in the newsfeed, you can do it by adding this source from the sources menu. The next source here is going to be Benzinga Wire, and this is our main source. This also has accompanying categories that we are going to discuss in a second here. Now, right beneath Benzinga Wire, you have some other options. You have Benzinga Wire regions, and if you click on that, it will show you some of the other regions of where this news can come from. And then you also have Benzinga Wire translations. Now, this content is the same as you would see in the Benzinga Wire. It's just a different way to filter or view that. So if you need the newsfeed transcribed, you want to go ahead and add a different translation language here, and the newsfeed will print in that language. You'll notice that there are some other options in here like blogs and reporter headlines. These includes things like Forex Live, Law.com, High Times if you're into the cannabis sector, Barron's, etc. Next, we have business news headlines, and these are things like Bloomberg, CNBC, and MarketWatch. And then finally, we have partner links. These would be things like Seeking Alpha, TechCrunch, Guru Focus, etc. Now, the next source here is another one of our main sources, and this one is on by default. So anytime that you add a new news feed to any workspace in Pro, the two sources that will be on by default are Benzinga Wire and press releases. Okay, now press releases, this is done via an API from the press release company. A lot of companies disseminate news to the public for the first time using a press release. If this is something that you want to capture and trade around, this is definitely going to be a source for you. One of the other things that you'll notice here is that my press releases, actually, I'm going to close the second news feed just for a sec. My press releases subcategory here, all of these are highlighted in brown. Now, a couple of things. First of all, if you only want to see certain press releases, obviously you can pick and choose what sources you want to do that from. But if you want to color them like I did here, you can simply use the slider on the right. Now, what I've done is I've colored these to be brown. Press releases reminds me of paper because traditionally press releases were released on paper. Paper comes from trees. Trees are brown. This is the mental connection that my mind makes. What's What's great about this is that if I'm looking in a news feed, like if I go ahead and press done here and I look at this news feed, I don't even have to read the headlines. I can tell what is a press release and what's not a press release based on this shading. So I would encourage you folks to try this out. You can use this for more than just press releases. This is just the use case that I found to be most effective for my own trading. Okay. Next here is going to be the SEC. And for any of you that have used the Edgar database in the past, that is what this news feed is. So instead of going to sec.gov and going to the Edgar database, I actually keep an SEC news feed on its own in my platform somewhere. That way, if I ever need to look something up, I simply go over to that news feed and look it up that way. I can filter it by keyword. I can filter it by stock. It's very easy for me to find what it is that I'm looking for. Last category here is going to be world news headlines. Again, this is Bloomberg Features, Boston Globe, Globe and Mail, New York Times. These are not necessarily financial related, but other types of world news headlines. Now let's talk about Benzinga Wire, because Benzinga Wire is our main aggregated news source. We did show you some of these other ones like business news headlines and things of that nature. What I mean by an aggregated news source is we actually have a team of news deskers that work for us, and they are constantly monitoring all of the different news channels. And when they see something that isn't automatically populated through one of our other channels, they add it to the aggregated channel. So the catch-all, the main channel for news, the channel that's going to give you the most amount of content is in fact going to be this Benzinga Wire. It combos incredibly well with press releases. Now, the other function that you have for Benzinga Wire are going to be the categories. If you click on Benzinga Wire, the next column in the hierarchy here will show you the categories. Now, a couple of key takeaways here. First of all, you can color these categories just like we talked about for coloring sources. So if I want to color interviews, I can click on it and then I can drag the slider to whatever color that I want, and it will color that individual category. I'm going to click the X to clear it because I don't actually want that, just showing it for the sake of the example. The other thing here is that some of these categories have subcategories. So for example, if I click on the word analyst ratings, you can see that there are a bunch of other categories here for analyst ratings. And third, and perhaps most importantly, the way categories work here is that you are shown what is checked. So a couple of things. If nothing is checked, that means you just see everything. That means you've effectively said, I have applied no filters here, show me everything. The same is true if you spend time checking each one of these boxes. Okay, you'll notice that if you check the parent box, it checks them all for you. But if you start checking each of those boxes, it is the exact same thing as checking none of those boxes. Where this really becomes important is when you start checking some of these boxes. And let me show you what I mean. I'm going to turn off press releases here. I'm going to go back to Benzinga Wire. I'm going to uncheck it so that nothing is checked. And now I'm going to only select a few of them. So we're going to do analyst ratings, general, news, tech, trading ideas. Okay. So now I've only selected a handful of these news categories. If I press done, the news that's in here are only related to the categories that I select. Now, this is a perfect time to add back that second news feed because I want to show you this. You can see here that the filtered news feed on the left, just at a glance, clearly looks different than the unfiltered news feed on the right. If you're a new user or if you're unsure what categories you really want, this is my first pro tip for setting up your newsfeed. If you are going to use the category filter, you might as well add another newsfeed right next to it and apply no filters to this. That way, now that I've applied all my filters, if it turns out that this piece of news here on Freeport-McMoRan was something that I really wanted to trade, well, I didn't see it in my filtered newsfeed. So I saw it here in my catch-all. This can be very helpful because, again, you might spend a lot of time selecting some of the categories, and then there might be a piece of news that comes out that's tagged a little bit differently than you think, and it doesn't appear in your newsfeed because of the filters that you've set up. You might see other traders talking about this and being like, oh my God, I missed this piece of news. What happened? Well, what happened is that your filters were slightly too aggressive and you commanded the software to not show you that piece of news. But if you listen to my pro tip here and you keep a second newsfeed open, that should actually serve as a catch-all. And even in this example here for Freeport-McMoRan, if you said, oh gosh, I would want this to be in my newsfeed for sure, you can actually click on it and observe the tag that it has. In this case, this is tagged with WIM, which stands for why is it moving? These are reasons why stocks are moving that our news desk has discovered. So again, especially when you're getting used to it, if you're going to use category filters, please try using 2 news feeds. This can help you understand what is and what isn't in the categories that you have, and it can also serve as a catch-all. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and close the filtered news feed for right now, and we're going to continue to work from a default configuration. I want to explain some of the other functions that you have available to you. We've already covered the sources button completely. The next thing we want to cover here is the importance button. Okay, and if I click on importance, you'll notice that it'll bring you to the same menu that we just saw. I could click on sources and go back to the same thing that we were just working on, but instead here I'm going to click on importance. This is a kind of a slider function for filtering your news. This is supposed to be easy to do without you having to think about specifics. In its default state, it's going to be on low. The applied filters are going to be right in here. This includes things like remove press releases about shareholder lawsuits. I've never used one of those for a trading decision, so I don't even want to see them. Okay. If it turns out you do want to see them, you can actually just uncheck that, and notice now that your importance setting is now custom because you've deviated from one of the default settings here, or you could simply click off and now it applies no filters and you're literally getting the fire hose of information through the newsfeed there. I'm going to leave this on low for the sake of the example. This is the setting I personally use on all of my news feeds. The next thing that you can do here is click on scanner. Now, let me explain what this is, because you also have a tool in Benzinga Pro that is a full-blown real-time scanner. But what's cool about this is you can